crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of their women.
Okay, next one on the list is Conan the Barbarian, 1982, the original. I first saw this in the theater, actually, in California in 1982.
I don't think I saw this in the theater. I think I saw it, I probably saw it on HBO or some shit when I was growing up.
I saw it in the theater and I loved it, and it was a rated R movie, and I wasn't able to see it. Really, I was too young to see it.
No one snuck you in?
And I stuck myself in.
Oh.
You know how I did that? This is
you hid in someone's backpack?
This is I'm gonna teach the British audience how to get rid of this shit, because I know the British, you know, they're very worried about what the ratings are. You know, little kids can't see anything that's R and blah 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 blah. Okay, what we used to do is we'd find out when the R-rated movie was going to start, and we'd actually say, well, what starts right before that? And hope it was PG, and get a ticket for that PG movie and go in there and see it, and wait 10, 15 minutes for the R-rated movie to start, and walk out of the theater and just jump into the R-rated theater. There weren't ushers.
Yeah.
I don't think there's ushers today.
They only come in after to just clean up the mess everybody does.
They only care about how old you are when you buy the ticket.
Yeah.
And the ticket that you buy. Once you get into the theater, you can go into any movie.
Well, you have to think that most of the people that work in movie theaters are teenagers or are making like minimum wage.
They give two fucks.
Yeah, they do not give half a shit like they were sneaking it around.
And they didn't give.
And they didn't back then either.
They didn't back then either. So all that shit was just to look good on paper. It didn't actually make a difference. But let's talk about Conan. I saw Conan in 82 in California on the big screen, and it was fantastic. And then they would play it forever, like on HBO, remember?
It was always on.
It was always on. I liked it, but it didn't have that same impact, because it just doesn't look as cool on an old cathode ray tube television. It doesn't even really look good in normal HD. But I got the Blu-ray, and it looks fantastic. It really takes you back to the original, what it was like to see it, you know, on a big screen. It's a slightly different cut. It's got a different ending.
Yeah, that was something I was kind of interested to see. It's not like a very long thing, but it's like a scene that was put at the end that they actually took out of the theatrical release. Yeah. They put it back in.
And it makes a big difference mythically.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, I wondered why I don't wonder why. I know why they probably took it out, but them taking that out made like kind of a big impact on the story. Like it kind of changed the whole thrust or the theme of the story, I thought.
Yeah, well, what they did was this is John Milius, who's the director of this, he was like a real hero worshiper. He wanted to go into the military, but he couldn't get in because he had asthma, and he liked military stuff and warrior type culture. One of the last films before this one, it bombed so badly, the one he was working on, that he threatened to send himself to the French Foreign Legion. But they put him on Conan, and while the whole time that he directed Conan, he wore a French Foreign Legionnaire's beret. Right? But there's a lot more going on in Conan than really meets the eye. It's sold as just an action flick.
Or just like a sword and sandals kind of epic.
Yeah, and it's really the best one of them all. There's really only one.
Oh yeah, definitely.
There's really only one Conan movie, and it's this one. You don't want to see Conan the Destroyer. You don't want to see the reboot. You don't want to see Crawl the Conqueror. You don't want to see any of that other crap. There's only one good movie, one good barbarian warrior movie, and that's Conan the Barbarian, this one from 1982. And it has a lot of subtext going back to like the great German philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche and Arthur Schopenhauer, and a lot of, you know, and they were bringing Eastern philosophy to the West back in the 1800s, you know. And this movie goes right along with that, you know. I mean, the Bushido Code, all that stuff's hidden in there. But the movie seems very simple on the surface, but there's quite a complicated, kind of a deep subtext.
Yeah, there's really a lot of stuff going on in this movie, which I didn't really realize, because I wasn't a huge action movie fan. I wasn't like a huge sword and sandals kind of fan. And I don't even think I read any of the Robert E. Howard books. I might have read one or two when I was a kid. But, you know, it wasn't really a genre that made much of an impact. So I saw it back in the 80s, but then when I saw it just recently, I was like, man, there's a lot of like stuff going on. There's a lot of like symbolism, and there's a lot of like callbacks to like different mythical heroes and stuff like that. And not all of it, I mean, because the story wasn't taken like exactly from the Robert E. Howard
No, it was
books.
Made up of the best stuff of Conan
they kind of
and
like,
Kull.
Yeah, they like picked and chose, like, you know, and they took stuff from other mythic figures and stuff and kind of folded it all into one tale. Now, the original script, I don't know if it was the original script, but one of the first shooting scripts was written by Oliver Stone, right?
Yeah, he was working on it, and it was evidently quite crazy.
Yeah, we heard it was super batshit.
Yeah, hyena-headed men and
which
armies of mutants.
Rad, actually.
There was, they almost made the movie post-apocalyptic too. Almost made this almost about mutants.
Yeah, I think his version was set after an apocalypse. But actually, I think when John Milius took over as director and stuff like that, I think he ended up using most of Oliver Stone's scripts, like for the first half of the movie. But then the second one, he just rewrote all of it.
I like this movie so much that they should have showed this to us like 2 weeks into basic training for Army infantry. It would have been awesome. You know, that's how it was, very motivational, and it had a lot of soldier values to it. The meaning of the movie is actually veiled in this thing that they have that they call the riddle of steel. Now, what the riddle of steel was about is that originally this was going to be 3 movies. So what do they call it? Trilogy. First one was going to be about steel. Second one, which is like the strength of a man, I guess you could say. Strength. And then how to use that strength was going to be in the second one. And then the third one was going to be the consequences. Now, they're thinking about making a third Conan movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Called King Conan, which may actually get back to the original idea, and it may be the
if we just pretend that the second one didn't exist.
Right.
Which I would like to do.
What are the consequences of being a badass warrior in your old age? You know? Part of the consequences would be like, how do you remain relevant in old age?
Right.
As a warrior. That kind of stuff. But we'll see if they actually make it. It's been in development hell. I've seen.
It sounds like a good idea.
Might be. This movie is partially narrated by one of Conan's friends that he meets later, who's a sorcerer, played by a guy named Mako. And you just know him as a sorcerer. That's the name of that character.
With a crazy wacky jacket on.
He's got a real famous monologue in the beginning, these are the days of hard, adventure and all that. Originally, it was going to be narrated by Conan himself. And I saw one of the prototypes of Conan doing his narration. And it was going to start off with Conan as an old man saying, my vision is going bad, I can barely see, but sit down with me and I'll teach you how I got here in the times of high adventure and what all this means, So it was good. I think
back
it was gonna be
in
cool.
the day. He was going to tell you about back in the day.
How I became such a badass and how I lost it in my old age. But I can still do stuff, that kind of stuff.
Oh, my piles.
Yeah. I think it would have been cool. And in the commentary, you have Milius in the commentary of my Blu-ray. You have Milius and Arnold Schwarzenegger making comments, and they were always thinking about, man, we should recut this and do it the right way, And it's because the studios didn't trust Arnold Schwarzenegger. This was his first movie, and they didn't think the audience could understand him.
Yeah.
And
although he only has like 6 lines in the whole movie.
Right. And what do you expect Conan to sound like?
Right.
Yeah, man. These are the days of high adventure, dude. Like he's from California. No. Conan should sound like some kind of a foreigner.
Well, yeah, because he's supposed to sound like exotic, like it's from thousands and thousands of years ago. You don't really know exactly where he's from.
Yeah.
They don't really specify.
I liked it. In the very beginning, you see Conan as a little kid, and his dad is teaching him about steel and the riddle of steel. And basically what he says that gods created steel, and they fought each other over it, and some of them were thrown into the earth. And after the battle, steel was just forgotten out on the battlefield, and human men picked it up and used it for themselves.
Here.
Yeah. But it's a metaphor, though. They're not talking about the steel that swords are made out of. They're talking about the steel that men and heroes are made out of. So basically, it's about, here's a good way to put it. You take steel, you heat it, you forge it, and you quench it over and over again, and it becomes steel. Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Could this also be a Prometheus metaphor, like the gods, Prometheus giving fire to humans?
Yeah.
Taking fire from the gods and giving it to humans. I guess that's a similar kind of concept.
Now, in the story, you find out that after he hears this from his dad, the village gets attacked by enemy barbarians.
Yeah.
And the main leader of the attack is James Earl Jones. Okay.
He's so rad in this.
Playing this guy named Thulsa Doom. Now, James Earl Jones is an Army Ranger. He's an ex-Army Ranger, Snake Eater.
Yeah.
That's what they did in the Rangers back in the day. And James Earl Jones tells this story about when he was in the Army Rangers, in the bonus material.
Yeah.
About when he was in the Army Rangers, they gave him all a snake that they had to take care of, and they had to sleep with it. That was their buddy. And at the end of Ranger School, they had to cut its head off and cook and eat it. So,
Harsh.
he knew all about snakes. But Thulsa Doom comes and attacks the village, and a bunch of symbolic stuff happens. He steals Conan's father's sword, which is this beautiful sword that they were showing him forge it in the very beginning. He takes the sword. He leaves Conan's dad to the dogs. Remember that?
Yeah, the dogs just attack him and kill him.
Right, and then they turn on Conan's mom, and you could see Thulsa Doom's lieutenants, they're looking at this beautiful woman, and they're like, wow, isn't she beautiful, maybe we can, use her or take her with us. Not Thulsa Doom, he just looks at that beautiful sword and uses that beautiful sword to cut that woman's head off.
Yep.
Thulsa
right
Doom,
in front of baby Conan.
Right, Thulsa Doom was above all that. He was only out there trying to find the riddle of steel. He was into steel, which they get into that later. And then Conan is sold off into slavery as a young kid, and they put him on something called The Wheel of Pain. And that's the name of the chapter of that part of the movie on my Blu-ray, The Wheel of Pain, which is a direct reference to the Wheel of Suffering. And the Wheel of Suffering is talked about in Buddhism, and it's also talked about Arthur Schopenhauer, and Friedrich Nietzsche talks about it. And the Wheel of Suffering is about desire. In life, we desire things, and then these things kind of disappoint us, or they satiate us. So we forget about them, and they're replaced by something else that we desire. So it's this constant desire and disappointment over and over again. It's called the Wheel of Suffering. And the only way to get out of that wheel of suffering is to stop desiring those things. You have to become above it. So that's what the Wheel of Pain was about in one aspect of it. They're showing Conan. The Wheel of Pain was like a big grinder, grinding wheat.
Yeah.
They were making flour. All right. And they chained all the kids to it, and they had to push the spokes on this big old wheel, and they just would round and round for years.
Yeah, that was also a very elegant solution to showing Conan growing up, because it's just over years and years, and he got older and older as he's pushing the shit around.
Yeah, and there's
over and
fewer and fewer kids as they're falling out.
Yeah.
Through weakness. And their weakness is making him stronger. Just like in life, about natural selection, Now, there's another thing about in Eastern philosophies, and also in Schopenhauer and Friedrich Nietzsche, they talk about that existence itself is wrong from a moral standpoint. And this is because everything imposes on something else, Wolves eat rabbits, and rabbits eat grass, and grass competes with other grass for sunlight and nourishment. Even inanimate objects fuck each other over by occupying space that another object could occupy.
Fucking rock.
Right. And the whole essence of what the will is, some people call it the force, or maybe the dark side of the force. It depends on how you want to interpret it. The will is about growth. And you grow by, in a way, taking the food and the nourishment, or taking things from other competitors. And sometimes it's given to you also. Matt, maybe we'll leave a link to a little video, really good video about the will to power. That's what it's talking about on the Wheel of Pain. So Conan's getting stronger, his competition's dying off. And as they die, he gets stronger. And in the end, he's the last one. They take him and sell him into slavery to another guy who's a pit fighter. They turn him into a gladiator. And this guy's got red hair and everything. He takes him, he throws him in a pit, doesn't tell him anything. He just has to fight this guy with these sharpened teeth. As Conan is in there fighting, he wins his first battle, his second battle, and then many, many battles. And he realizes that through the narration, they tell you that life and death are about the same thing. So he starts to become kind of above it all, indifferent. And what they're referring to is that in a lot of these warrior philosophies, especially like in the Eastern ones with like Bushido and things like that, and some of the Machiavellian type thinking, is that a man becomes a true warrior when he can give his own life or take the life of another with equal indifference. That's some hardcore shit. That it's just indifference. What they're talking about is like a kamikaze mentality. And this is talked about, in Friedrich Nietzsche and Arthur Schopenhauer. So they point out that that's what Conan learned in the pit. But with the reaction of the crowd, the people were cheering and betting on him. He also got a sense of self-esteem through it. He realized that in the wheel of suffering, or in life, in the struggle for survival, that he mattered, that you have a say in this. You're not just being thrown through it, and you don't matter. You know what I mean? You do matter.
Yeah.
That's what he finds. It's what he finds out. Now,
well, I think
that goes in with the will too.
Yeah, like he realized that he had some measure of control. He could control things. He wasn't just pushed around by circumstances.
Exactly. You can kind of control or manipulate certain aspects of nature. Now, he got so good at this, his slave master really started living through him vicariously. His slave master was reaping all these material rewards and getting rich off of Conan, but he was not getting the spiritual richness that Conan got. They sent him to the east. He studied under the great weapons masters. They gave art and philosophy to him. In other words, they gave him education. They even bred him off with the most beautiful women of the area. But the slave master himself, he wasn't getting all these warrior virtues himself because he wasn't in the wheel. And there's a scene where his master just let him go. Basically out of respect in a way. He let him go, and you could see that he was crying. And Conan really didn't want to go. He wanted to stay. But he kicked him out with nothing. And he kicked him out into the world. Conan didn't know freedom or the world. And what was the world filled with? They show you. Wolves. He's running from wolves.
It's the first thing that happens to him when he gets free. He gets chased by wolves.
Yeah, he doesn't have a way to make a living. He doesn't have a home. Nothing. He runs up on a big pile of rocks and falls in through a hole in the ground and goes down into a subterranean tomb. Now this leads back to Crom. Conan believed in a god that lived in the earth named Crom. But the director said that tomb that he falls into is actually the tomb of an 8-foot tall Atlantean general and his harem that was buried in there alive.
Like them Egyptians used to do.
Yeah, the Chinese used to do it too.
Yeah.
So Conan sees this huge skeleton in armor, sitting on a throne with this rusted old sword next to him and all these women chained up in the walls. They're all dead. They've been dead for, I guess, 1,000 years. And he thinks it's Crom. And he sees underneath his hand is a sword. And Conan goes to take the sword. He takes it away and clears it off. And it's just this beautiful Atlantean sword that he thinks his god gave him. And while he wasn't looking, it looked like the skeleton moved and fell and just collapsed and fell to the ground. And Conan, you could tell he wasn't really sure. Did it move or did he move it? What the symbolism was is that you had this great Atlantean general that had kind of like passed the torch along to his successor. In other words, he was kind of like a benefactor, a spiritual benefactor. Yeah. To Conan.
He'd been waiting in the bowels of the earth for the right person to come along.
For the right warrior to come. So he passes the torch along to Conan. Conan submerges out of the ground. Those wolves are still there. He's got the sword in his hand. And in the next scene, you see that Conan is wearing those wolves as a jacket.
Also, it's significant that one of the first things he does with the sword is to cut the chains off of himself.
That's right. Cuts the chain. So it's kind of symbolic of that Conan inherits a means to make a living from a successor other than his father. In fact, there's a long theme of having multiple fathers. Yeah. He had his biological father who taught him the riddle of steel. He had his slave master father who gave him all of his strength to turn him into steel, all of his strength and his education. And then this new father that gave him a replacement sword, the one that his father had lost. His ancestral sword was now replaced with this Atlantean sword. And then he goes off into the world to make a living. And after he kills the wolves, he runs into this wolf witch. Yeah. That's a pretty good scene. The wolf witch tells him where to find Dulce Doom so he could avenge his family's death. I'm not going to give the details of that in case you haven't seen it. And he also meets chained outside a wolf witch's captive, who was Subutai. Subutai was kind of like modeled after Genghis Khan. And
he's a thief and an archer.
He frees him, and he becomes kind of like Conan's first friend. Yeah. He doesn't want anything from him or anything, He's just a friend, and he does things for Conan.
Yeah, they've got each other's backs.
Later on, Subutai and Conan go into a town, and it's a real famous scene there. They get high on Stygian Black Lotus, which is, the director says it's basically LSD.
Yeah.
They run into a guy who's just cracking down on a yak or a llama.
That's sexy.
Yeah, and it's funny because I watched another review and they had some young guys going, "Why the hell did he punch that camel?" You can't really see it clearly.
Yeah, see, I didn't notice it the first time I watched it.
I think they kind of darkened it. So it didn't get an X rating.
Bestiality, you guys.
Yeah, but back in the 70s, you could roll with bestiality. All right? They come around a corner and they see this dude just cracking down on the yak and they're high and they go, "Look at that, have you seen anything like that?" And they're laughing and Conan's backing away from it like, "God, that's nasty." And he backs into a camel and turns around and knocks that camel out because he thought that camel was trying to fuck him. But you can't see that in the new. You can't see it real clearly in the new Blu-ray.
That was a very rapey looking camel.
Yeah, so I was listening to these young guys reviewing it, going, "Why the hell did he punch that camel?" Well, you didn't see the original theatrical version, when that guy fucking that. Well, I don't know if it was I think it was a llama from memory. Well, they meet this chick named Valeria, and Valeria is a warrior woman, and she's like total equal to Conan. And what it means symbolically is they're saying steel is not something that just men have. Steel is, in other words, that warrior virtue, something that women can have too. And she ends up being like a warrior equal to him, but in some ways surpasses him later on in the story, because through a woman's, and they show you this through the story, in a mythological kind of mythical way. They show you that a woman in many ways has kind of a superiority over men in terms of their ability to empathize and sacrifice. And through that, she eventually gains immortality as a Valkyrie.
Yeah.
And actually conquers death and comes back and saves Conan in combat, which that's a really good part of that story. Now, there's something that Jenny and I have been working on. They all climb up into the tower, one of Thulsa Doom's cults, and they fight a big snake, which is kind of symbolic of making fighting a dragon. But a serpent is also kind of a reference, I think, to Ashura.
Yeah.
And Ashura and the eye of the serpent is a reference to Ashura, and I think it has something to do with female power, just like in the Garden of Eden.
I kind of see it as almost like a reverse Garden of Eden reference.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What you have, the situation there is you have one of Thulsa Doom's lieutenants running a big part of the cult, and he's the only guy there, and he's got a bunch of women who are serving him, and they're sacrificing themselves to this giant snake. In the center of the snake's lair that they have down in there is this thing called the Eye of the Serpent, and it's a big ruby about the size of a fist.
Yeah.
Now, this is some kind of a holy relic or something symbolic in the story, because at certain times that they show it, certain points, you'll see a red gleam that they've added, like it sparkled. And Conan steals that Eye of the Serpent, and later on he gives it to Valeria. Valeria wears it, and it shines at a certain part right before she kills two enemies. This is later on in the movie. And then later on, it's returned to Conan. And at one point, Thulsa Doom asks Conan where it is and what he has done with it. And he goes, "Luxor says you gave it to some girl." It's almost as it was something that belonged to women, but Thulsa Doom had taken from women.
Yeah.
And Conan returned it back to women, at least for a while. And then he ends up getting it after Valeria dies. Do you really understand
what
that was about?
Well, like I said, I kind of do think that there was a whole pagan female power type of thing going on too, along with the multiple fathers idea. Mm. Because I was like, not only is there the kind of Garden of Eden metaphor of like the serpent and maybe the ruby representing like the apple or the fruit of the tree of knowledge or whatever. Yeah. But like I said, it's almost like a reversal, because in the Garden of Eden story, Eve got in trouble. But I think that it kind of represents, like you said, like a female power, female knowledge that Thulsa Doom and the male portion of the equation had stolen.
It's stolen. They were denying it from women.
Because check this out. I find it very significant that in the beginning, when Conan is still a kid, and the kid who plays Conan as a kid looks just like fucking Neve Campbell from Scream. That's her name, right?
Yeah.
It freaks me out. And I was like, that's a boy, but it looks just like that girl when she was older. Weird. So I find it significant that when Thulsa Doom raids the village, he is content to let Conan's dad just get eaten by dogs. Yeah. He's like, yeah, whatever, fuck that guy. But Conan's mom who is standing there trying to protect the kid. She stands in front of him and she like holds out a sword to Thulsa Doom like she's going to kill him, even though there's fucking hundreds of men. And he looks at her for a long time, almost like he's hypnotizing her. And then he cuts her head off.
Right.
So I think he's symbolically taking away her power, taking away female power.
Right.
Because he spent a long time looking at her
trying
and
to mesmerize
like
her.
he was trying. Yeah, like I said, he didn't just like knock him over or let the dogs eat him like he did with the men.
Milius said that he was hypnotizing her, but he was above sexual attraction to women in that way.
Yeah.
And that he, at that time, was pitying her for being weak and was taking steel over it.
Yeah, I guess, but in some ways...
That may have been the perspective that Thulsa had.
In some ways, though, I think that kind of just feeds into what I'm saying, because the fact that he used the sword to cut off her head, and he's saying, oh, well, I don't need to rape her, I don't need to do... Right. You know what I mean? But in some ways, because he used the sword as almost like a dick metaphor...
Yeah.
To take her power away. Right. So he almost like metaphorically raped her, really.
Right. Something, yeah. There's a bunch of metaphors and a lot of symbolism going on.
Like I said, there isn't a lot of sword and sorcery type of movies.
I knew that there was something up with this Eye of the Serpent. It's not just a MacGuffin, and I think you're pretty much right that it's some kind of an Eden reference. It's a female symbol of some sort.
Yeah.
If any audience member really knows any more about her, maybe they understand a little bit better, you can leave it in the comments section. Now you find out that eventually Conan gets captured by Thulsa Doom. Thulsa Doom says, I'm here because you killed my whole family, my mother, my father, my tribe. And then Thulsa goes, yeah, that was back when I was interested in steel. And Conan goes, oh yeah, the riddle of steel. And he goes, oh yeah, you know what that is, don't you, boy? And he goes, well, now that you're here, I'll tell you. I'll tell you the meaning of the riddle of steel. It's the least I can do. And he says, steel isn't strong. His flesh is stronger. There's a really cool scene. And what this did for me is that it makes a connection between warriors and sorcerers. That eventually a warrior can achieve a certain amount of enlightenment. And when he does, he can transform into a sorcerer. And what I mean by that is that a warrior solves problems with his hands. A sorcerer solves problems with his words. And that's kind of what you see going on. You see that Thulsa Doom is kind of like a Jim Jones cult leader. And he's brainwashed people with a bunch of false ideas to give up their own natural preservation, to give up their instincts for natural preservation. They're willing to kill themselves for Thulsa Doom. Instead of killing somebody with a sword, you're killing a person with ideas, killing a person with your words. They're serving him. That it's more powerful because it's not using, brute force.
I also wanted to say there was actually a really nice parallel there that I only just thought of. Whereas Thulsa Doom was getting everyone to sacrifice themselves just for him and for a pointless reason, it's significant that Valeria sacrifices herself willingly because of her love for Conan.
Love, right. Now, Thulsa Doom, even though he's a cult leader, he's not a charlatan. Milius says that he's the last survivor of Atlantis, of an Atlantean race of people, that they were black-skinned with blue eyes and straight hair, and that they could live for thousands of years. So, and you see in one scene that Thulsa Doom can transform himself into a giant serpent.
So he is a real wizard.
He is a real sorcerer. He does have the power. So he's not a fake. And what he seems to be doing, you find out later on that the cult has a secret. You take people and you take away their ability to think for themselves by giving them kind of like a pseudo-religion that makes them not focus on their own will, but only on the will of Thulsa Doom. In other words, they'll sacrifice themselves. And you take these people and eventually you kill them and you use their bodies as food to feed the other members of the cult. So you come in, they fill your head full of a bunch of, bullshit that they show, like guys balancing rocks on their heads and trying to search for emptiness and seeing eternity in water and all this kind of new agey bullshit. And you take them into the temple and you have like a big orgy and you give them drugs and then you get them to sacrifice themselves and you feed them to the new incoming cat attack.
What's up, Miss Beijing? Do you want to be on the show too?
She wants to go outside.
Oh.
We can cut all that out. Okay. And then these cats are fighting. Come on, I got to think. Okay, let's go. I want to go outside.
I don't leave that in. That's hilarious.
Okay. In the normal cycle of life, you have your own desires, and you're on the, basically, like you said, like on the wheel of pain where you have desires, they're fulfilled, and then a little bit of disappointment, and then a new desire. But what Thulsa was doing was taking that same concept and accelerating it into a shorter period of time. You know what I mean? Get them high, show them a good time. They were calling it paradise, remember?
Yeah, and then the big temple that they had. Really good set, by the way.
Yeah. Then you get them to kill themselves, and then you turn them into food for the next batch.
Yeah.
You're getting them to move away from normal life, which that's a pretty cool idea.
Yeah.
All right, but that was his version of sorcery. So you just set up a death machine, like a cult death machine, where people come in, take drugs, have orgies, eat the bodies of the followers that were, came before you, and then you kill yourself.
Yeah.
Weird. But, and then you got Thulsa back there gaining power from it somehow.
Maybe he was like eating their essences or something. Well, because
explained.
Weren't they were throwing themselves into the giant snake pit, right?
Well, among other things.
Yeah, among other things. Yeah. But maybe, because that was his snake, maybe when it ate the people that threw themselves in there, maybe that was somehow like transferring, like their essence was like transferring to him.
No, because remember, it wasn't that old. Rexor, or whatever his name was, raised it.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't that old. It was just, he just fed off death,
yeah,
I think.
All right,
just
that makes sense.
Things dying. Now, originally, the ending was chopped up a lot for the American audience. They simplified it. Conan basically just shows up and kills Thulsa Doom. There's really not a lot of drama to it.
So the interesting thing, and we were going to talk about this, about the end scene that was cut out. Now, in the original theatrical cut of the film, if I remember correctly, and this is what I saw on cable too, I think,
right,
it pretty much ended right when Conan got to the temple or whatever and killed Thulsa Doom. Right. Now, this is after Thulsa Doom tried to, I don't know if he was trying to talk him out of it, but he was saying stuff like, well,
I'm your father.
Pretty much. It's like, you wouldn't be what you are if it wasn't for me, which is kind of true because, I mean, Conan's whole life has the whole thrust of his life has been toward getting revenge on this dude, right?
Right. Now, here's one of the things that, we failed to mention before. The whole reason, one of the side reasons, or one of the additional reasons that Conan wants to get at Thulsa Doom is that Thulsa Doom has possession of a king's daughter, a princess.
Yeah.
And he and his party have been hired to rescue this girl.
The king gave him a bunch of jewels to go and save her.
She's way into this cult. She doesn't want to go anywhere. They capture her. Thulsa Doom basically almost kills her, but
it's just like,
Conan
fuck
saves
that bitch.
her.
Yeah.
So she kind of turns on Thulsa Doom.
As you would.
In the original ending that was cut out of the American theatrical release, this girl helps Conan get back into the temple and kill Thulsa Doom.
Right.
And they actually show this in the original version, and that's what's on the Blu-ray. And there's a bunch of symbolism that go on in that scene after Thulsa is killed. And the main thing is that you see that Conan had an opportunity to become the new cult leader.
Right.
The king's daughter was getting ready to basically worship him as a god.
Yeah, I mean, after he killed Thulsa Doom, he's walking down the stairs of the temple, and all of the followers are like throwing their candles down and going, fuck this shit, we gotta do some other shit now, we're good. But so they're leaving, and he's walking down the steps, and the king's daughter, I can't remember what her name was.
I forgot.
I did too. She's not in it very much.
No.
And the king's daughter is like walking right behind him, and she runs out in front of him and bows down in front of him as though he is her leader.
But he rejects that.
And he just walks around her.
Yeah.
And then she gets up like, what?
Yeah.
And then he makes her he tells her to get up, or he motions for her to get up. And then doesn't he like hold his hand out to her?
Yeah, and they leave together as equals.
Yeah, as if to say, you're my equal, I am not your...
Right. And the way
I'm not like Thulsa Doom.
The way I interpret it, after he killed Thulsa Doom, he thought about it for a long time. There's a whole scene of him sitting there on the steps
he's sitting
thinking,
there like,
should I take over?
Yeah. Or he might have been thinking about what Thulsa Doom said to him about how, well, now I've killed him, and what do I do now? Because that was like my whole mission.
I believe that he was considering taking over, but he actually...
Yeah, he could have been, yeah.
And it gets back to how warriors can evolve into sorcerers.
Yeah.
And he rejected magic. He said, no, I'm going to do it with my hands.
Yeah.
Basically. I want to be a warrior. And, there's, in the original Conan stories, there's always this thing between warriors and sorcerers. You know what I mean? Conan does not like sorcery. It's the same analogy as a soldier and an intellectual. It's the same analogy. Yeah. He says, no, I'm going to be a soldier. Or soldier and scholar. Even though Conan was educated. He was educated. It's just that he did not want to seek power through words and mind control. That's the way it's...
Yeah, because I think the whole thing about the wizardry and everything like that, I don't know if they were necessarily saying it was all bad, but the way that Thulsa Doom wielded it was bad because he was using it for mind control and he was using it for nefarious
Another
ends.
analogy might be soldier and politician.
Right, yeah. You could see it that way too. Right. Actually, he is probably, Thulsa Doom is probably more like a political, or like a cult leader, like you said.
Like a politician.
I actually do think that Milius might have based him a little bit on Jim Jones. As a matter of fact.
You're right, it was. There's elements of all that.
But it should be noted that, and this was actually, I learned this on the Wikipedia page, apparently the character of Conan that's in the books is kind of different than the Conan that was in the movie. Yeah. Now, in the movie, like I said, Arnold Schwarzenegger doesn't really say hardly anything. He has very, very few lines. So, like I said, I think that analogy really holds up where he doesn't talk much, but Thulsa Doom talks a lot. Yeah. And, there's kind of that dichotomy going on.
Yeah, evidently
brains versus brawn.
Evidently the Conan from the book is a lot more educated, speaks a lot more, and is like a tactician. The Conan that you're given in the movie is actually a creation of cherry picking from the book series.
Yeah.
Also, cherry picking from the Marvel comic series, and Milius making his own mythic tale about Conan that's kind of a morality tale. Plus Schwarzenegger. Schwarzenegger made that role his own.
Yeah. All right. And I think they kind of threw in some stuff from Norse mythology, Greek mythology. I mean, there was the stuff with Hercules.
Germanic philosophy.
There was the stuff. There was like a whole crucifixion scene, which actually is one of my favorite scenes in the movie where they hang him on the tree.
Yeah.
And the vulture comes like he's going to die and stuff like that. And he just takes the vulture and like bites its neck and kills it.
Some people want to draw parallels with like a Christian Jesus crucifixion. I don't think so. To me, it looked like Hercules.
Well, and the crucifixion on the tree thing, that's more a Norse thing, I thought. It's not on a cross, it's on a tree. That's, like I said, that's older than Christianity.
Just Milius playing games.
Yeah, so I think I read that more as a Germanic or a Norse mythology reference rather than a Christian mythology reference.
But this is an excellent movie. It's a movie that you want to see on Blu-ray if you have a real big TV, good sound system. It's awesome. The music's awesome. One of the problems, though, with the music on this, it's not really a problem, but this is one of the last movies to be recorded in mono.
Really? I did not know that.
You didn't really notice it, did you?
No.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you something, though. The theme, the Conan the Barbarian theme, I get it stuck in my head. It will not come out.
The music's fantastic. And here's the thing, seeing it as a kid, I just saw it as an action movie.
Yeah.
But seeing it so many years later, with, the books that I've read and military service and everything under my belt now that I'm in my 40s, I see it open up with a Friedrich Nietzsche quote. That which does not kill us makes us stronger. And I didn't remember that.
See, I don't know if that was in the theatrical version or the cable version because I don't remember.
Because critics of the day. I read the critics of the day said, man, that kind of ruins it. But they didn't know what they were talking about. And so it opens up with a Friedrich Nietzsche quote. Then I'm hearing riddles of steel, and I'm going, okay, so this is going to be a morality tale. This is about philosophy. And then a barbarian attack with Wagnerian music in the back. Yeah. And I'm going, Friedrich Nietzsche.
You could call him that like you call Krussel. Like Kurt Russell, you're just running it together.
I'm still calling him Friedrich. You got Friedrich. You got Wagner. You got Schopenhauer. You got all that stuff happening at once. I go, okay, I know where Milius is taking me. Once he established that with me, I just started looking for the imagery and the morality tales. And the philosophies there, and all the little icons kept popping out at me.
I really did like this. I really did like this movie a lot better than when I saw it back in the 80s.
It's aged very, very well.
It really has. And like you said, it's because, you can just watch it as like a cool
action movie.
Action movie, sword and sandal kind of flick. But then also there's all this other symbolic stuff going on. Yeah. And it's like, and it's mythic. And it's really
it is
cool.
not a dumb movie.
No, it's really not.
No.
I mean, even though you might seem like, this is just this big beefcake walking around not saying much of anything, but no, there's tons of shit going on.
It has a very classic and sophisticated subtext going on with the imagery.
Like I said, it's very there's like Beowulf shit in there. There's like all kind of shit in there. It's like, if you want to see it, you don't have to see it, but it is.
No, they have to see it.
You have to, Tom says.
You have to see that shit on Blu-ray with a really big HD TV and a really good sound system. John R. would love this movie.
I'm sure he's probably already seen it.
You got Army Rangers in there, the bad guy's an ex-Army Ranger. Come on. You didn't know Darth Vader was a Ranger, did you? Okay.
I did not. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
He always seemed like such a nice man.
Dropping atomic bombs on Russia in his first movie.
He did.
Dr. Strangelove. Yeah, he was in the air. He was in the B-52 crew.
Oh, wow.
I think he was Navigator, I think.
That's his first movie?
I think it was his first movie.
I need to see that movie again. I haven't seen that movie.
He did an awesome role in it.
Yeah.
James Earl Jones, man, come on. That dude is a god.
He is. He's a badass.
Yeah,
I love James Earl.
He's a badass on all levels. Basically, a spiritual level. His spiritual intensity is just fucking... He steals the show in this movie.
He really does. He's a great villain.
Great villain.
In this movie.
James Earl Jones himself said that Thulsa Doom was the prehistoric Darth Vader. It is the same character, basically.
Pretty much,
retold in a different... It's the same character. I'm your father.
Yeah.
He even pulls that in it.
Yeah. Yeah, he does actually, kind of. He does I don't know if he uses those exact words, but
no, you'll see. You'll see what I'm talking about. And he actually does have the Force. I mean, this guy's 1,000 years old at least. True. He can turn into a snake. So he's not a normal mortal man.
And actually I really liked, I mean, it's the 80s, so they did that effect the way they did it in the 80s. But actually it looks super cool. Yeah. Like all the snake effects they did were actually really nice. Like the models and stuff that they made looked like real snakes.
Yeah, all practical effects. Most of the cities were actually built. There were matte paintings, but you can barely tell. The sets are fantastic.
Yeah, remember back in the old days when they actually built sets instead of just like making them in a computer?
Yeah. And stupid big dudes.
Stupid big
dudes with stupid big axes and
I have to tell you, the two guys that are like Thulsa Doom's like two henchmen.
Yeah.
At the beginning in the scene when they take off their helmets and stuff, I'm like, oh look, Anvil has arrived.
Yeah, no, Iron Maiden actually.
Or Spinal Tap.
Yeah, Iron Maiden has arrived. Matter of fact, Iron Maiden actually made a song about Conan.
Of course they did.
Yeah, it's called Sun and Steel. That's it's called. You're going to put that bitch at the end of this video.
Okay, I will. I'll find it. All right.
Alrighty.
So that's our latest movie review. Wow, we went on a long time about this.
Yeah, well, it was kind of... I wanted to do something special with this. I hope I rose to the occasion. I hope my warrior virtues came out. So I could actually explain
They did. I can see them coming out right
now.
Well,
I can feel it. And I can see it mythically, what's happening in the story. I have a hard time communicating it sometimes verbally. Yeah. That's why I got you.
I have to tell you, though, that your warrior virtue came out so much that you made the lights in the room go out.
I know. Yeah, it did.
While we were recording, all the lights in the room went out. The power didn't go out.
Burn light bulbs out.
But the lights all went out. There's 3 light bulbs in that, and they all went out at the same time.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, I remember it's happened many times, and I've told you that that's happened throughout my life.
He's poltergeisting shit again.
Just, excitement can do it.
Yeah, he was getting excited. He's getting excited. You broke my office lights.
So all 3 of them went out?
Yeah.
I saw them all flashing, but I really didn't pay much attention to it.
Yeah, I thought it was just because it's storming.
That was about, 5 minutes ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well. So we're sitting in the dark. So from the dark, hope you enjoyed this movie Retrospective from 13 o'clock. I gotta replace some light bulbs. Yeah, he's got to replace some light bulbs in my office so I can see to work.
Alrighty.
See you guys next time.